At the Chengdu local prosecutor's office, a driven prosecutor named Xiao Dongyi works tirelessly, believing his success hinges on upholding justice and righteousness. While he initially appears aloof, those who know him discover a playful and surprisingly humorous side. However, his path to glory hasn't been without its bumps. Xiao Dongyi has faced accusations of corruption, tainting his image as an upstanding prosecutor. Now, involved in the case of a missing high school girl, he finds himself navigating a delicate line between his gut instincts and the facts. The film opens with a celebratory dinner for promotions at the prosecutor's office. Meanwhile, Dongyi sits outside a convenience store, eating instant noodles, having been passed over for the chief prosecutor position he'd confidently expected. Browsing online, he stumbles upon past accolades, surprised by the praise he once received. Later, he joins his colleagues at a bowling alley, offering tips to Chief Jian on her technique, excitedly cheering her unexpected strike. A young woman, Yu Rai, cleans up nearby, earning a generous tip just for listening to their banter. Dongyi then takes his turn, with only Si Woon offering encouragement. The next morning, Dongyi drives to work, a smile playing on his lips, until a car suddenly pulls out from a side street, nearly causing a collision. He accelerates in retaliation, but the other driver veers off in a different direction. Back at the office, Dongyi receives a stack of new cases, initially thrilled by the volume, only to find them disappointingly mundane. This tedious routine continues for days. Medication, a mountain of boring cases, and coffee. By Thursday, he's added coffee to his morning ritual. On Friday, along with his usual medication, he's saddled with complaints about a homeless person and a petty fraud case from a flea market. On October 24th, at around 8 am, Young Kai drives along, happily singing, when someone drops fruit onto the road. Unable to react in time, he crashes into a roadside barrier. Though the other person is at fault, Young Kai seems unconcerned about making a big deal out of it. Dongyi is shocked when Young Kai demands 1 billion won in compensation for a seemingly ordinary ceramic vase. Young Kai insists the vase is unique, crafted by the artist Li Yun-sang. Dongyi reviews Young Kai's statement, promising to investigate and speak with the person responsible. He learns that the suspect, Lee Kyung-hak, is a well-known local restaurant owner. Suddenly, shouts erupt in the hallway. Mr. Lee is brought into Dongyi's office, visibly intimidated. He confesses to the accident, but balks at the 1 billion won demand, leading to a heated argument. Mr. Lee finally reveals that his restaurant caters to his family and close-knit community, charging only 1,000 won per meal. He painstakingly prepares each dish himself, offering it at a price he can barely afford, sacrificing sleep to make ends meet. Hiring help, he explains, would make it impossible to maintain the 1,000 won price point. To save on ingredients and transportation costs, Mr. Lee has gone to the market every Tuesday morning for over 10 years. After hearing his story, Dongyi allows him to leave, but starts thinking about how this case could boost his own career, even though Mr. Lee is technically the perpetrator. That evening, investigator Joe slips into a clandestine movie theater to meet with Park. He questions Park's inaction, reminding him that if Chan Hyuk doesn't make a move, Byung-gun will kill him. Park counters that he wouldn't have contacted Joe in the first place if he had those intentions. The next morning, Dongyi visits an art gallery, browsing for potential purchases. After signing a sales contract, he questions the staff about their shipping procedures. He learns that they understand the risks involved with transportation. He discovers that Ju Young Kai purchased the vase by Li Yun-sang on October 24th. Dongyi, flashing his prosecutor's ID, inquires why special delivery wasn't used. The staff member reveals that Young Kai specifically requested to transport the vase himself, despite previous purchases always utilizing special delivery. Dongyi presses for more information, but Young Kai arrives at that moment. Outside, the two men argue. Young Kai, revealing he's a lawyer, explains he wanted to personally deliver the vase and therefore didn't need special delivery. Dongyi demands to know the recipient, but Young Kai refuses to disclose the information. Later, lawyer Ju confronts Mr. Lee at the Happy Restaurant, berating him for not working and earning money to pay the compensation. Enraged, Mr. Lee drags Ju inside, brandishing a knife. Dongyi arrives just in time, preventing a violent attack. He learns that Mr. Lee's outburst stems from a neighborhood-wide water outage, compounded by Ju's harassment. Dongyi suggests a settlement, But Mr. Lee insists he doesn't have the money. Dong Yi proposes an alternative, appearing on a TV show as a kind-hearted shopkeeper, highlighting the potential prize money. Suddenly, Mr. Lee receives a call from the water company about a problem with the pipes in his yard. Mr. Lee, perplexed, claims he's lived there for over 10 years without any prior issues. Dong Yi continues to push the TV show idea, but Mr. Lee remains stubbornly resistant. Kyung-hak contemplates buying a grinder for his restaurant, lamenting that he should have bought one long ago. Driving back to the office, Dong Yi is overtaken by a car he recognizes as the one that nearly caused his accident earlier. He retrieves the memory card from his dashcam and hurries back to his office. Back at the office, Dong Yi confirms that the license plate number matches the one involved in the incident near Happy Restaurant. He dispatches Si-woon to collect security footage from the area. Dong Yi tracks the car to a junkyard. Young Kai is summoned for questioning. Si-woon presents evidence showing Young Kai driving back and forth on the same road for 8 minutes. Dong Yi points out the discrepancy between Young Kai's claim of delivering the vase to a relative and the GPS data placing him near Happy Restaurant. He suggests that lawyer Ju, knowing the restaurant's delivery schedule, orchestrated the accident. Cornered, Young Kai agrees to press charges, and Dong Yi officially opens an investigation. He realizes that lawyer Ju is behind everything, giving him 2 choices: settle with the restaurant owner or face the prosecutor. Dong Yi also deduces that Ju intentionally caused the near accident with him to time the incident perfectly. Leaving the office, Dong Yi receives a call from Chief Jian. He meets her at a restaurant, where the chief introduces him to Director Nam. Nam hands Dong Yi a bank card, urging him to drop the accident investigation, hinting that the restaurant will soon close anyway. Dong Yi questions the card's limit and expiry date, scoffing at the bribe attempt, recognizing it as a tactic from a decade ago. He refuses and leaves. Later, Dong Yi brings pastries to Happy Restaurant to speak with Mr. Lee. Finding the front dark, he goes around back and discovers Mr. Lee digging in the yard. Dong Yi wonders if he mistakenly told the water company to send someone. Suddenly, he sees a bag filled with bones in Mr. Lee's hands. Startled, Dong Yi drops the pastry box. Hearing the noise, Mr. Lee turns, wielding a shovel, and knocks Dong Yi unconscious. Dong Yi awakens tied up, lying next to a corpse. Mr. Lee sits nearby, holding a sickle, menacingly approaching him. After Dong Yi's pleas, Kyung-hak hesitates, unsure how to dispose of the body, lamenting the lack of a grinder. Dong Yi, desperate to survive, proposes a mutually beneficial solution. He'll help Kyung-hak classify the death as an unidentified person. He appeals to Kyung-hak's desire to escape his monotonous life of cooking for strangers. Kyung-hak, suspicious of Dong Yi's sudden kindness, almost attacks him again, but Dong Yi quickly elaborates on his plan for legally disposing of the body. He mentions needing to go to the prosecutor's office, which enrages Kyung-hak, who threatens to kill him. Dong Yi insists that only official channels like the court, police station, prosecutor's office, or prison can handle such matters. To get the necessary forms for disposing of a body legally, they must go to the prosecutor's office. He emphasizes the speed and simplicity of the process, promising Kyung-hak freedom afterward. Finally convinced, Kyung-hak releases Dong Yi, but only after making him move the other bodies to a temporary hiding spot. They set off for the prosecutor's office, the sickle still pressed against Dong Yi's stomach. At the office, Kyung-hak forces Dong Yi to fill out the forms, holding the sickle to his neck. When the printer malfunctions, Kyung-hak offers to fix it, giving Dong Yi a chance to escape. He makes a run for it, but Kyung-hak catches him, silently forcing him back to the desk. Desperate, Dong Yi throws things and yells about a murderer, creating chaos. Investigator Joe arrives, but his intervention is ineffective, allowing Kyung-hak to escape. Jae-hee appears and tackles Kyung-hak, allowing Dong Yi to grab the dropped sickle. Everyone joins forces to subdue Kyung-hak, but he takes Si-woon hostage and flees into the elevator. Dong Yi pursues him through the stairwell. Just then, the police arrive, only to find the elevator has stalled. Kyung-hak is apprehended, unconscious but still clutching the forms. Dong Yi, injured by the sickle, is rushed to the hospital. Prosecutor Jian holds a press conference about the incident. Investigator Joe, despite his minimal contribution, boasts to reporters about his role in apprehending the murderer. Chief Jian, following the director's orders, decides to keep Dong Yi's commendation internal, fearing public scrutiny and the resurfacing of past scandals. Meanwhile, at Happy Restaurant, police escort Kyung Hak into a squad car. He explodes in a rage, cursing and yelling Dong Yi's name. As a result, Dong Yi becomes the subject of sensational news headlines. At the Qingju police station, Mr. Li enters the interrogation room and is immediately met by a remorseful young Kai, who apologizes profusely. Mr. Li, enraged, lunges at him, but Wan Sung intervenes, calming him down. Wan Sung then brings up the Happy Restaurant property. He explains that since Mr. Li murdered his wife, he has no inheritance rights and therefore no legal claim to the restaurant's land. Lawyer Ju presents Mr. Li with a land purchase agreement, prompting him to recall Dong Yi's earlier warning about their scheme to swindle him out of his valuable property. Mr. Li refuses to sign. Undeterred, he asks Wan Sung to kill Dong Yi, but Wan Sung refuses, unwilling to murder a sitting prosecutor. At the hospital, Dong Yi is about to return to his room when he spots Yu Rai. He calls her, but she ignores him. She then suddenly turns back, following Dong Yi closely to help him evade Jiao Ri, who is searching for him. They take refuge in Dong Yi's room. Later that night, Dong Yi is awakened by a phone call. He eats while reading news articles dredging up his past, including accusations of being a corrupt prosecutor. The next morning, Si Woon arrives with a basket of fruit, explaining that it wasn't from him but delivered to the door. The card reveals it's from Li Hong Construction. Dong Yi immediately orders Si Woon to throw it away. However, Si Woon discovers an envelope inside, which contains money. Dong Yi calls Li Hong Construction, demanding a meeting. Dong Yi returns home, retrieving items to transform his appearance. That evening, he arrives at a high-end nightclub in a stylish suit. He meets Wan Sung, tossing money at him as compensation for disrupting his business. Dong Yi sarcastically remarks on the hard-earned nature of Wan Sung's concrete business profits. Wan Sung, unfazed, anticipates a much larger payout, seemingly oblivious to Dong Yi's insinuation. Dong Yi reminds him of the land he gifted him nearly 10 years ago, a plot in the Gokjeong village area of Qingju, which at the time was worth a fraction of its current value. The land's value has since skyrocketed, making it a substantial bribe. Dong Yi lunges at Wan Sung in anger, but stops short of hitting him. Wan Sung mocks Dong Yi and the power of prosecutors to manipulate the truth. Disgusted, Dong Yi leaves. As Dong Yi's taxi departs, thugs armed with guns storm the nightclub. Chan Hyuk, exiting the club, is confronted and brutally beaten for interfering with Qingju's best merchandise. The police arrive, arresting the thugs. Back home, Dong Yi searches his closet and finds a red envelope. He remembers Wan Sung giving it to him 10 years prior. Inside, he finds the land deed, confirming Wan Sung's story. Dong Yi is devastated by the realization that he unknowingly accepted a massive bribe. The next morning, Dong Yi went to the decent real estate agency. He questioned why the seller was selling land in Qingju while residing in Seoul. The seller simply said it was convenient and offered a price of 150 million won. He emphasized that it wasn't rural land but located in Qingju City, the low price reflecting its value 10 years ago. He also mentioned upcoming demolition and redevelopment. The agency owner, aware of the redevelopment plan, wondered why the seller listed the land at a price from 10 years prior. He advised Dong Yi that holding onto the land until the new building's construction would make him the owner of the entire building. After hearing these benefits, Dong Yi, having taken the documents, regretted the missed opportunity. He realized that if the redevelopment truly happened, such a chance might never come again. Later, Dong Yi sat in a cafe, lost in thought. Prosecutor Steo couldn't give up the land, even if it meant facing Director Nam's wrath. He felt he had no choice but to confront him, worrying about the implications of being labeled a corrupt prosecutor, influenced by a benefactor, and facing a ruined career. While contemplating his options, Dong Yi casually scrolled through his phone and saw SEO and Heo law firm's contact information. Later, Prosecutor SEO visited Counselor Kang after years of absence. After a brief catch-up about life, Counselor Kang unexpectedly offered Dong Yi a position at the firm. Dong Yi hesitated, fearing the resurgence of past controversies and the negative impact on the firm's reputation. However, Counselor Kang insisted, stating that there were no unsuitable candidates from the Western District Prosecutor's Office's Criminal Division 3. Meanwhile, the police investigation revealed CCTV footage of Prosecutor SEO entering a nightclub before the violence occurred. They also found footage of him entering a private room with Won Sung, but the meeting lasted only about 5 minutes. Just as the police dispersed, the teacher called, informing them that his daughter, URRI, hadn't been to school for several days. URRI was at home, counting a pile of recently acquired money. At the same time, GM Ho visited Mr. Won to discuss the stolen goods. He even provocatively suggested that Mr. Won should cover the nightclub's repair costs. However, Mr. Choi decided to use the money as funeral expenses for the thugs who had robbed his store. He also assured GM Ho that the thieves would be handled, and everything would be resolved amicably. Afterward, GM Ho agreed to cooperate with Mr. Won again, but requested assistance in dealing with the thugs who had severely beaten Mr. Choi's deputy. That evening, Dong Yi drove to Lee Hong Construction. He aggressively headed for the elevator to confront the director. However, upon learning the director had already left work, he immediately returned to his car. Back at the prosecutor's office, Dong Yi asked Si-woon to gather all documents related to Lee Hong Construction. Si-woon, recognizing the company name, initiated an investigation, discovering numerous past cases involving the company. He promised to provide Dong Yi with the documents and Won Sung's address. Outside, Prosecutor Seo instructed everyone to gather all documents related to cancelled and invalid land contracts and submit them to Dong Yi for review. Dong Yi then met with Section Chief Jian, who praised him and presented him with paperwork confirming his promotion to Prosecutor of the Criminal Division 1 at the Cheongju District Prosecutor's Office. His courageous work on a long-running serial murder case made him a model prosecutor. The Deputy Chief Prosecutor would present the award at the Prosecutor's Office, so Dong Yi was asked to prepare an acceptance speech and expect a post-award interview. As they left, they encountered Section Chief Yim, who had questions. The nightclub's security footage showed Prosecutor Seo meeting someone there. Byung-gun sarcastically remarked on Dong Yi's quick connections, including Director Nam of Lee Hong Construction, wondering why influential people were so fond of him. The police were investigating why Prosecutor Seo had met Director Nam at the nightclub, knowing Nam's unsavory reputation. Just as Dong Yi struggled for an answer, Si-woon arrived. He explained that Director Nam of Lee Hong Construction had sent a fruit basket and 200,000 won to Dong Yi's hospital room, which Si-woon had unknowingly accepted. Dong Yi had subsequently returned the money to Director Nam at the nightclub. Their coordinated responses convinced Section Chief Yim. Later, Dong Yi went to Director Nam's house, but unexpectedly encountered Jae Ray, the same person who had chased Yu Rai at the hospital. Meanwhile, Mr. Choi was making a clandestine transaction under a dark overpass. Upon returning to his dormitory, Dong Yi received a call from the team leader about a murder case involving a weapon. At the desolate crime scene, while the team documented the evidence, Prosecutor Seo recognized the victim's physique. He carefully removed the victim's mask, revealing to a shocked Dong Yi that the deceased was Yu Rai. Before the accident, Section Chief Yim was the last person to call his daughter when he heard gunshots. Shortly after, 2 patrolling officers received a call to the scene. Horrified, they discovered a woman's body in a deserted field. As they prepared to contact their superiors, they noticed someone hiding nearby and gave chase, apprehending Jae Ri. Meanwhile, Director Nam was enjoying a sauna when he received a call. Upon learning of his son's murder, he frantically called Section Chief Jian of the Criminal Division, desperately pleading for Prosecutor Seo to take the case. He promised to provide documentation proving his son's innocence regarding any damages to his company and to repay all damages. Back at the crime scene, Dong Yi questioned the officers about the apprehended suspect. They had apprehended Jae Ri immediately after discovering the body. The suspect had used a hunting rifle, which had yet to be recovered. Just then, a grief-stricken Section Chief Yim approached his daughter's body, but was prevented from entering the crime scene by the police. Driving back, Dong Yi pondered the use of a hunting rifle and Jae Ri's involvement, remembering Director Nam's earlier anxiety. At the police station, Dong Yi was confronted by Won Sung, worried about his son and suspicious that Prosecutor Seo had leaked information to the suspect's family. Director Nam, desperate, offered the land deal and other matters as concessions. Dong Yi angrily confronted him, questioning whether he knew who his son had murdered. Leaning in close, Dong Yi revealed that the victim was the daughter of the criminal division's team leader. 3 officers exiting the station encountered Wan Sung, leading to a search warrant for his home to look for the rifle. In a separate interrogation room, evidence was being collected from Jiao Ri. Only Han Min remained, observing Jiao Ri with a strange look. Officer Choi warned Jiao Ri that even expensive lawyers or a plea of insanity wouldn't prevent imprisonment. Enraged, Han Min was about to attack Jiao Ri for denying the murder, but was interrupted by a subordinate who brought the suspect to the interrogation room. Even with a lawyer, escape seemed unlikely. The police were still searching for the murder weapon at Director Nam's house. The location where the hunting rifle was kept was now empty. A lawyer deduced that the police hadn't yet found the murder weapon. Director Nam, enraged, called Lawyer Ju to find the gun. Wan Sung furiously demanded his son reveal the gun's location. The following day, at the Qingju prosecutor's office, a meeting was underway to further investigate the murder case. Dong Yi questioned Section Chief Jian about her actions the previous day. He asked if she had known the victim was Team Leader Im's daughter when she assigned him the case. He then inquired if Myran had called Prosecutor Seo specifically because the murder involved a firearm. After receiving confirmation, Dong Yi surmised that the minister was collaborating with Director Nam, believing that without the land deal entanglement, the case would have been resolved differently. After the meeting, Dong Yi received a message with a picture of Yu Rai wearing a backpack containing the gun given to her by the suspect. He contacted Hyung Woo to discuss the method of murder, feeling there were still inconsistencies. They needed to examine external evidence showing the suspect gave Yu Rai the gun. Hyung Woo questioned Yu Rai's teacher and classmates. The backpack was now considered evidence, but despite an all-night search, it remained missing. Dong Yi decided to visit the bowling alley. He found it closed but detected someone inside. The owner initially refused entry, but upon learning Dong Yi was a prosecutor, let him in. They talked. The police had already seized the security footage and questioned the owner about Yu Rai and the blonde-haired boy. However, the owner quickly grew tired and wanted to sleep. Meanwhile, Director Nam and his lawyer visited his son, Jiao Ri, with young Kai present to prevent recording. Wan Sung pressed close to his son, gently asking about the gun's location. Despite his father's pleas, Jiao Ri maintained his innocence and claimed ignorance of the gun's whereabouts. Hours later, enraged by his son's unresponsiveness, Wan Sung grabbed Jiao Ri's hair, instructing him to remain silent, deny everything, even under duress. He promised to handle Prosecutor Seo and ensure Jiao Ri's release within 24 hours, claiming that even prosecutors in Qingju operated within Wan Sung's sphere of influence. He insisted that Jiao Ri remain silent and that the prosecution would drop the charges. However, Jiao Ri continued to deny involvement. Prosecutor Seo then interrogated Jiao Ri, who, following his father's instructions, remained silent, clinging to the promise of release. Seo relentlessly attacked Jiao Ri with accusatory statements, exploiting his fear of imprisonment, finally breaking his silence. Jiao Ri revealed that Yu Rai intended to sell everything at once. They had initially found the drugs at the train station, and fear prevented them from returning them. Yu Rai insisted they would eventually sell it all. They used an app to receive orders and deliver the drugs in backpacks. Jiao Ri had urged Yu Rai not to sell the drugs but chased after her when she secretly left. He gave her the gun fearing for her safety, but then heard a gunshot. He broke down, lamenting his inability to reach her in time. He then detailed their remaining drug transactions. The next transaction was scheduled for September 7th at 2 am. At the same time, Hyung Woo called Team Leader Im to search his home for his daughter's drugs. Hyung Sik immediately went to his daughter's room but found only a backpack filled with cash. Prosecutor Seo arrived at the train station's security office. Reviewing the footage from that time, he discovered that Yu Rai and Jiao Ri had encountered Park Chan-hyuk. Park Chan-hyuk flew into a rage upon discovering his missing drugs. Jiao Ri denied knowledge of the bag, but security footage showed them both fleeing with it. Dong Yi then visited the scene of the drug theft. He theorized the nightclub was the Qingju drug trafficking hub, and that Zhou Yongjian's obstruction of the search warrant was significant. The drugs were lost and found by the children, suggesting that if the transaction had been disrupted, Mr. Dan would have been lucky to survive. Mr. Dan would be furious at the loss of his investment, but if he knew who took the drugs and who resold them, he would act. Instead of viewing it as a clash between youths, the large sum of money involved pointed towards something bigger. The gun wasn't simply given to Yu Rai and then taken back. Jio Ri might have shot her secretly. However, overlooked was footage showing them practicing handling the gun. The accidental discharge wasn't certain. A large-scale buyer might have been involved, making anyone a potential suspect. At the police station's visitation room, Director Nam brought his son snacks. He was about to question Jio Ri about his encounter with Prosecutor Seo when Seo unexpectedly arrived, asking Jio Ri about the bag's owner. The security footage clearly showed him seeing the bag and fleeing. Wan Sung and his lawyer were baffled. Dong Yi revealed that Jio Ri had stolen the drugs and that he would bring the bag's owner before him. He added charges of murder, theft, and illegal drug trafficking. After Dong Yi left, Director Nam furiously wanted to beat his son. He couldn't understand why his son would resort to stealing and selling drugs despite receiving everything he wanted. Wan Sung's frustration was immense, but he couldn't bring himself to physically harm his son. Dong Yi then requested a search warrant from the section chief to search the Park family's home. He was grateful for her approval. As he was leaving, Prosecutor Joe entered, announcing that the Phantom Purple drug deal would take place that night. The section chief instructed Joe to stop Dong Yi, who returned to his office. Joe had planted an informant with Chan Hyuk, scheduling the deal for 10:30 p.m., giving them 2 more hours to prepare. If they apprehended him without the drugs, they wouldn't find the source. Choi Jin-ho would flee, and the girl's death would be in vain, all due to Joe's refusal to approve the search warrant. Joe showed everyone a message. The deal was at the second factory at 10:30 p.m. He believed Chan Hyuk killed the girl for stealing his drugs. He aimed to catch Jin-ho, then Mr. Kang, and finally the masterminds, preventing further victims like Yu Rai. It was the final chance to stop it before a nationwide spread. They might not save the world, but they could eradicate this drug ring. Meanwhile, Park was being observed by 4 officers. Suddenly, the entire major crimes unit received an order to assemble. Prosecutor Seo had someone watching Park. He wanted the police to release Park and follow him to see if he was the killer destroying evidence. Director Nam suddenly appeared as Dong Yi was on the phone, blaming the deceased girl for inciting Jio Ri. Despite Wan Sung's pleas and bribes, Dong Yi felt a profound sense of the limits of humanity each time he saw Director Nam. He believed Jio Ri didn't deserve a father like Director Nam, and that he had made the wrong friends. The buyer of the drugs was Kim Kai-won, also known as Mr. Won. The route to the transaction point included only the Northwest Overpass and Jiaotang Village Highway, but a 0.8-kilometer stretch of forest separated the factory from these roads. Even at high speed, escape was unlikely. All possible detour routes needed blocking. Choi Jin-ho led the mid-level gang, while Mr. Won's group handled transportation. Armed police units were deployed to arrest everyone, especially Choi Jin-ho. The officers took their positions, waiting for their prey. At the funeral, Director Nam confronted team leader Im, revealing the children's involvement in the Qingju drug ring. Hyung-sik, enraged, contacted the station, reproaching them for not informing him. They feared his violent reaction. Mr. Choi called his subordinate, Park, who nervously lied repeatedly to Ji-ho. Hyung-woo was watching Chan Hyuk from his car, but, after briefly ducking, lost sight of Park. At the abandoned factory, police surrounded the building as Choi Jin-ho and his men arrived for the transaction, seemingly unaware. Mr. Won arrived arrogantly but noticed Park's absence. After inspecting the drugs and completing the transaction, police launched a large-scale raid, with both sides engaging in a fierce struggle. The gang fought to protect their boss's escape. Police implemented a large-scale blockade, while Prosecutor Joe happily collected the purple drugs dropped by the fleeing thugs. Dong Yi finally reached the lab and discovered a large quantity of drug ingredients. The finished product could poison 20,000 people. He found Yu Rai's backpack. In an adjacent room, they discovered a body and a gun matching Jio Ri's serial number, along with purple drugs found in the victim's mouth. The victim, Kang Soo-min, was from Seoul with no criminal record. However, his position made it impossible for him to have self-administered the drug. Dong Yi recalled Prosecutor Zhou mentioning a Seoul-based distributor of purple drugs, Mr. Kang. The factory and producer might be different entities. Choi Jin-ho had escaped, and the purple drug was spreading. This case became Dong Yi's mission to find the factory and distributor. Catching them would reveal who disrupted the exclusive provincial drug trade and who aimed at the Supreme Prosecutor's Office model prosecutor SEO Dong Yi. If Jiao Ri wasn't the serial killer, Dong Yi could release him, not due to external pressure, but his own decision. Perhaps not just the wind, but even fate itself was shifting. After discovering incomplete fingerprints on the gun's trigger, the investigation team suspected a struggle. They suspected Kang Soo-min fired first, wounding the perpetrator, who then wrestled the gun away and shot Soo-min. This was a possibility, but they should still check for mixed DNA. However, the main problem was the absence of the perpetrator's fingerprints at the crime scene. The perpetrator might have worn gloves while sending Soo-min to the afterlife. Therefore, Dong Yi decided to follow the trail of blood left by the perpetrator. Strangely, he found no blood, no security cameras, and no cars in the vicinity. Searching the room for clues, the male protagonist asked his colleagues to check if the victim's car had passed through any toll booths, as the results might be related to the perpetrator. Dong Yi also instructed his colleagues to bring Park Chan-hyuk to confirm the manufacturer's identity. Suddenly, a colleague reported that the manufacturer had escaped while the investigation team was momentarily off guard. Dong Yi was shocked, as his colleague had previously assured him that no one would escape. Losing one piece of the puzzle wasn't ideal, but the male protagonist could still search the small room for the perpetrator's fingerprints and shed hair. Was the perpetrator bald, or so obsessed with cleanliness that he even wore gloves while eating ramen? After searching, the male protagonist unexpectedly discovered that the perpetrator suffered from obsessive-compulsive disorder, hindering the investigation. While questioning whether the perpetrator lacked fingerprints, a colleague entered, mentioning that people who touch drugs lose their fingerprints. Furthermore, he stated that even after showering, the strong smell would linger on police officers who spent several hours in such an environment. Hearing this, Dong Yi remembered the old man from the bar the previous day, whose body odor and persistent cough due to methamphetamine production perfectly matched the description. At Jiao-ri prison, he was finally arrested. Meanwhile, his father was apprehending the methamphetamine trafficker, Chan-hyuk, to question him about the delivery when his phone suddenly rang. The caller, Byung, asked about Choi Jin-ho's whereabouts. Upon hearing of his disappearance, Chan-hyuk became furious. After the call, Won Seong revealed that Choi Jin-ho had mentioned seeing someone discard a bag. At the police station, while everyone was investigating the victim, Byung-gun suddenly arrived looking for Chan-hyuk. After a verbal confrontation, he and Dong Yi argued over who would find the suspect. Won Seong's subordinate found Choi Jin-ho on the road, but discovered he was already dead. Won Seong then ordered them to dispose of the body and replace him with Chan-hyuk. They then threw the bound Chan-hyuk into a deep pit and covered it with an iron lid. Dong Yi went to find Han Sang-sik himself, intending to meet his subordinate outside. However, he was confronted by a muscular, tattooed man, causing the male protagonist great regret. He attempted to leave, but the man stopped him to ask about taxes. The subordinate outside received a message for help and immediately ran inside. Dong Yi seized the opportunity to have his subordinate take his place and quickly escaped. After apologizing to his subordinate, Dong Yi began searching for new clues. Byung-gun also arrived at the apartment complex, but unsure of the apartment number, he shouted Chan-hyuk's name, infuriating the residents. Back at the office searching for clues, the male protagonist found an envelope and remembered Won Seong yelling his name in relation to bribery for land development. Recalling Won Seong's attempt to bribe him to release his son at all costs, he immediately prepared to take action. At Won Seong's house, having just received news of his son's disappearance from prison, the doorbell rang. Unexpectedly, it was Dong Yi, accompanied by his son. He pulled his son towards him and thanked Dong Yi. Inside, however, Dong Yi presented a contract for the sale of the land Won Seong had long desired. Dong Yi used sweet words to persuade him to sign. Won Seong said, "You're scared, aren't you?" and then stamped the contract with his seal. Before leaving, Dong Yi mentioned the ongoing investigation into his son's case. Won Seong replied that he would handle it himself. Immediately after Dong Yi left, Won Seong summoned his son to punish him. Outside, Dong Yi muttered that Wan Xiang would certainly not escape the methamphetamine charges. He prayed that the relocation and redevelopment project could be cancelled. Getting into his car, Dong Yi determined his next mission: to apprehend the methamphetamine producer at the Supreme Prosecutor's office. Meanwhile, Wan Xiang hired a team of skilled lawyers to clear Min Jok, also known as the whitewashing of methamphetamine trafficking charges. They decided to have Yu Rai take the fall. However, the perpetrator's face had been exposed on social media. The police were diligently calling every number to locate the employees who worked at the Spear bowling alley, but were repeatedly ignored. Upon apprehending one suspect, Dong Yi quickly questioned him about Yu Rai and arranged a meeting. Preparing to go to the bowling alley, he called his senior officer, promising success. Despite encouraging his junior officer, a feeling of unease crept over him. At the bowling alley, he worked with the employee to find images of the owner and leftover items in the trash. Seeing the medication containers used by the suspect, he knew there would be clues and immediately took samples. Meanwhile, Chairman Wan Xiang stood before a throng of reporters, feigning apology and blaming the police chief's daughter for methamphetamine trafficking, causing a public uproar. His son, the informant, stood before everyone, denying all charges. At home, the Yu Rai family mourned the loss of their daughter. Police officer Jai He, seeing the accusations against the victim coming from Jiao Ri, felt pity for Chairman Nam. He could so easily whitewash his wrongdoings. At the store, Dong Yi discovered evidence related to methamphetamine that perfectly matched the frail old man he had encountered. At the same time, the employee provided a clear photograph of the owner's face. Byung-gun received news that the suspect's abandoned vehicle had been found and immediately went there. Dong Yi reflected on his life's milestones: missed promotions, unacknowledged efforts, and being constantly overlooked by his colleagues, treated like air. But now, only Dong Yi knew the key to this earth-shattering case. With a determined look, he set out to seek justice, heading towards the Supreme Prosecutor's office. When Byung-gun arrived, he found Kang Soo-min's car had a parking ticket and was about to be towed. Suddenly, a train whistle made Byung-gun realize something. He immediately informed the police, who found the frail old man at the port. At this time, Dong Yi was rushing to Pyeongtaek General Hospital to search for someone. While Byung-gun was anxiously searching on the train, his rival apprehended the drug manufacturer at the hospital. So, CO Dong Yi made headlines with the exclusive arrest of the drug trafficker in the Chingju bathhouse murder case. Nam Wan Xiang, after reading the article, realized his son truly wasn't the murderer. CO Dong Yi, from beginning to end, was just putting on a show for him. So, he decided to do something. Meanwhile, CO Dong Yi was accepting the Exemplary Prosecutor Award in front of a crowd, but this was only in his dream. Back in reality, he received the Exemplary Prosecutor Award with his small camcorder. Not only that, the protagonist detailed the clues he had discovered. A very logical investigative journey. At the same time, Hong Tae-ik was being interrogated by the police. He stated that he wanted to retire, but Kang Soo-min didn't share that intention. Right then, drugs reappeared in an unexpected place, with Yu Rai. So, Soo-min thought he was betrayed, because clearly the manufacturer wasn't cooperating anymore, but someone else was. Therefore, he decided to take care of Yu Rai, and then Tae-ik, but Tae-ik killed him instead. However, these facts didn't entirely match the gunshot wound on the victim's body. Dong Yi, reviewing his recording, was extremely satisfied. While Tae-ik was tormented by the public's criticism directed at Yu Rai, the protagonist was celebrating with his colleagues when the chief prosecutor suddenly arrived to congratulate him. Finally, the protagonist enjoyed the feeling of being the center of attention at the joyous party. Byung-gun, envious and wishing he could steal this spotlight, got drunk and complained to the heavens. After the party, despite returning home alone on a cold, windy road, the protagonist was incredibly happy. The day after this happy occasion, a TV program aired about the shocking past of an anonymous prosecutor X, with Nam Wan Xiang as the guest. He recounted how his son was subjected to violence by the prosecutor from the beginning of the case, solely to turn him into the murderer. He claimed statements like, "I will prolong the case because Nam Jiao Ri only has a few months left until graduation," to sentence him to life imprisonment, were due to verbal abuse by the prosecutor in charge of the case. He specifically named Dong Yi, accusing him of frequently making baseless accusations against innocent people. He also added a video suggesting Dong Yi intended to plant false evidence in the victim's room. With his firm words and angry emotions, Nam Won-seong successfully sparked outrage online. While everyone was pointing fingers at Seo Dong Yi, he was happily talking to his wife on the phone and choosing a nice outfit. Then, the day he feared arrived, the day Nam Won-seong publicly exposed Dong Yi as the bribe taker. The protagonist never imagined that his moment of relaxed breathing in the fresh air would be the beginning of a stressful fight for justice. On the way, Dong Yi's junior saw the video but couldn't bring himself to tell him, seeing his cheerful mood. While everyone at the police station was still worried about him, and some were angry, Dong Yi confidently strode towards his dream life. So, before the year-end Exemplary Employee Award ceremony, Dong Yi was unceremoniously dragged away. His wife, watching him with an angry look, surprised him. At the cafeteria, the chief prosecutor was blaming the department head for not stopping Dong Yi in time, despite taking all the credit the day before for nominating him. Before the meal, he scolded the staff, yet immediately afterward, he cheerfully invited everyone to enjoy their food. Meanwhile, the protagonist was being berated by his wife. She reminded him to apologize to everyone at all costs before leaving. Simultaneously, Mai Ran went to see Won-seong, but he treated her with disdain. Although he didn't want to negotiate further, he became anxious when Mai Ran mentioned his son. His attitude shifted from contempt to welcoming Mai Ran warmly. At a pub, the protagonist drank alone, contemplating even grabbing Chairman Nam and jumping off a building together out of frustration. Dong Yi wondered why Chairman Nam, after disappearing for years, had reappeared now. The saying, "Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me," wasn't true. The one who hits forgets, but the one who is hit never forgets. Dong Yi had even forgotten the name of the first victim. Now, the protagonist was standing in the figurative dock, paying for his past mistakes. The judge brought up the year 2017, when he left his position as a prosecutor to work at the Blue House, despite a law prohibiting prosecutors from transferring there. After completing his work, he returned from the Blue House to his prosecutor position. Dong Yi's shortcut was completely exposed. Although given a chance to explain the reasons behind Won-seong's actions, the judge repeatedly questioned him about fabricating evidence in 2017. Then, the judge continuously accused him of verbal abuse and demanded a life sentence, leaving Dong Yi flustered as these were all events from his dark past. Furthermore, the judge mentioned Dong Yi's previous special investigations and discovered violations, which went unpunished. The judge argued that this lack of action led to the current situation, silencing Dong Yi. The judge then mentioned plans to question Prosecutor Hwang Soo-mak and the then chief prosecutor, Kang Won-chul, the senior to whom Dong Yi had promised to return after fulfilling his duties well. Mentioning Kang Won-chul struck a nerve with the protagonist, triggering an angry outburst. Nam Won-seong, hearing about the widespread rumors he had started, was overjoyed. He wanted the target to obediently comply, to the point of voluntarily going to the police station. Meanwhile, Jae-hai went to the construction site herself to search for remaining clues in the case file, despite being ordered to stop. Chan Hyuk was being detained and questioned by Won-seong's men. In his office, the protagonist pondered the decision to suspend prosecution against Nam Won-seong. Finally, he drafted an indictment against Nam Won-seong and gave it to his junior colleague. All his colleagues, learning about Dong Yi's chance to clear his name, were overjoyed. Previously, the protagonist went to Chairman Nam's house to apologize, but overheard that Won-seong's lawyer was detaining Chan Hyuk. He decided to inform Byung-gun about this for him to handle. Afterwards, Dong Yi received a meeting request from Jae-hai. She presented the entire file regarding a construction worker from Lee Hong Construction who had mysteriously disappeared and reappeared. However, Dong Yi showed disinterest, consumed by his hatred for Nam Won-seong. Jae-hai reminded him that he was also suing Won-seong. She warned that once the construction was complete, the case would be buried. Making matters worse, people at the construction site recognized Jae-hai and wouldn't let her near, so their only hope was Dong Yi. At home, Nam Won-seong, upon receiving the indictment orchestrated by Dong Yi, furiously yelled at him. His lawyer was also exasperated by his difficult client. Upon arriving to read the indictment, the lawyer suggested Won-seong send someone useful over, leading to Won-cheol being introduced to Nam Won-seong for collaboration. Simultaneously, the protagonist discovered an anomaly at the construction site. The next day, he arrived at the restaurant, mentally prepared to beg his wife for forgiveness. Even if it took a billion apologies, he would accept it. Sitting across from his wife, he used all his sincerity to apologize. However, as he listened to his wife speak, he feared they would be separated because of the false rumors. His wife asked about the reason for Nam Won-seong's animosity towards him. Dong-yi honestly recounted everything, explaining how he had arrested criminals involved in human trafficking, yet Won-seong targeted him, even blaming him for the death of a child. His wife agreed with the good deed Dong-yi had done, but when he mentioned the land, she immediately became furious. Finally, Yuan decided to calm down and resolve the issue. Hearing this, Dong-yi promised to do his best to put the scoundrel Won-seong in jail. Well, it seemed simple enough. But first, Yuan demanded her husband write a pledge according to her dictation. The main content was that Dong-yi would personally arrest Nam Won-seong and restore his honor, not allowing himself to be criticized for money. If he violated the pledge, he would lose custody of their child and leave behind all his assets. At that time, Nam Won-seong was recounting all the good deeds Dong-yi had done, yet Dong-yi dared to sue him. After finishing his business with the law firm representative, Won-seong's subordinate assured him that he had gained a very advantageous position. Not stopping there, he reminded his subordinate to immediately report any slip-up by Dong-yi, so he could sue him to smithereens. He even had a second recording session scheduled for Monday to further expose Prosecutor Dong-yi. The first session had already caused a stir on social media, and Nam Won-seong was certain that after this recording, Dong-yi would be fired because the land explosion issue was paramount. Nam Won-seong was reveling in this, as the trump card in his hand was about to turn to dust. However, he still detected a problem with Kang Won-seol's attitude, making today's meeting a waste of time. Nam Won-seong could now practically recite the dates, even if the bribe taker couldn't remember. Regardless, he would squeeze every last drop out of him. Immediately afterward, Won-seong received intelligence that a woman resembling a reporter had arrived at the construction site. He immediately ordered his subordinates to erase all traces. Meanwhile, Dong-yi had arrived at the construction site, investigating to find a loophole. He discovered that tomorrow at 3 p.m., all the workers would be off. Returning to his office, Dong-yi planned something to prevent his opponent from having another chance to incriminate him. Indeed, the next day, social media had shifted its focus. Nam Won-seong's subordinate immediately reported this to him. It turned out that Dong-yi had posted on the prosecutor's internal network about the past, when he was still naive and Won-seong had given him a piece of land. But now Won-seong was using this to threaten Dong-yi to make his son appear innocent. Dong-yi then accused Nam Won-seong of bullying civilians to steal the land, not forgetting to warn him that the disciplinary committee was still investigating, so he would wait for the punishment. Upon learning this, Nam Won-seong immediately posted a rebuttal. Reading the post, Dong-yi's colleagues suddenly worried he might do something rash. At that moment, he was holding a shovel and a roll of rope, preparing a pile of things to go to the construction site to reclaim his honor. However, Dong-yi couldn't handle this alone. Thinking of his clumsy juniors, he immediately dismissed the idea. And what about asking Byung-gun for help? No, that wouldn't work either. Just then, a worried Byung-gun arrived, scolding Dong-yi for turning off his phone. Upon receiving the apology, Byung-gun felt his face flush slightly. Dong-yi immediately brought out his tools for Byung-gun to choose from. He explained the clue he had found. If the body was indeed at the construction site, they could definitely turn the tables. Meanwhile, Jae-hee was being chased by Won-seong's subordinates. She accidentally fell into a deep pit and overheard them discussing how to handle the situation. One of them said they just needed to pour cement like last time. Just as they were about to bury her, Jae-hee woke up, staring at the excavator poised to bury her alive. But even when interrogated, Jae-hee didn't answer, knowing her teammates were coming to the rescue. Indeed, Dong-yi and Byung-gun arrived, sensing something amiss, and immediately ran inside. Just as the thugs were about to attack, Jae-hee revealed her identity and successfully called out to Dong-yi for help. She urged her teammates to arrest them, ignoring the wound on her head. Thus, without gaining any further clues, the three ended up in the hospital. Nam Won-seong was furious upon receiving the news that someone had interfered with his sight. After some discussion, the trio decided to use imaging technology to search for the body at the construction site. The next day, Byung-gun directly questioned Nam Won-seong's lawyer about the people at the construction site and Chan Hyuk, but the lawyer feigned innocence, claiming ignorance. Byung-gun could only warn him to abandon ship before Nam Won-seong turned on him. Outside, Won-seong was summoned to provide information about the thugs. Sitting in a room filled with police officers staring at him, Won-seong spun a tale about a theft at his construction site. Finally, he reluctantly admitted that the thugs were his subordinates. Suddenly, Park Chan-hyuk arrived, confessing to distributing the hallucinogenic drug. He stated he had delivered it to Yu Rai, causing outrage. Amidst the chaos, Won-seong tried to slip away, but was detained by the police. He eventually let his lawyer handle the situation and left. Upon exiting the police station, he called the person in charge of the groundbreaking ceremony, confident he would deliver a crushing blow to Seo Dong-yi. Meanwhile, the trio went to find Myran, hoping to provoke Nam Won-seong into digging up the bodies himself. However, Myran decided to fire Dong-yi. Later, Hyung-sik also sought out Jae-hee to discuss the construction site, because Chan Hyuk had suddenly confessed out of fear. His brother-in-law had met a similar fate, as had his daughter who worked with him. But Jae-hee found these words meaningless. Since the murderer had been caught, what could they do to Won-seong? He clearly had no intention of being reasonable. At that moment, Nam Won-seong began the groundbreaking ceremony in front of all the reporters. But when he returned home, he discovered his house had been ransacked, his money destroyed. At the police station, Byung-gun interrogated Chan Hyuk and discovered he had been severely tortured. Byung-gun was furious, having promised to protect him. But due to his stubbornness, Choi Jin-ho was ruined, and now Chan Hyuk was bearing all the blame. But at this point, he was so threatened and traumatized that he seemed like a lost soul. That night, while Hyung-sik was using a camera to probe the construction site, Dong-yi handed over the victim's files against the criminal to his junior. Dong-yi explained that his junior could go to the 9th floor to meet with Park Yun-jing to discuss the matter. After handing over all the work, Dong-yi was about to leave when Won Cheol suddenly walked in. He was surprised to discover that Won Cheol had become Nam Jae-ri's defense lawyer. Having lost his authority in the office, Dong-yi was coldly brushed aside. It was finally the day of the trial. Nam Jae-ri, sitting before the court, uttered pre-planned slanderous statements. Miraculously, the case suddenly shifted all the blame onto the victim, Yu Rai. Hearing the opposing lawyer's words, Si-won unwittingly fell into a trap. Si-won questioned whether Yu Rai might have seen documents related to the drug transaction. While everyone fully believed Yu Rai stole or was involved in the drug deal, Si-won raised a different suspicion because this completely contradicted the testimony of the key witness. Won Cheol then requested the judge to reconfirm this, demanding the witness's testimony that they had conducted long-term transactions with Yu Rai. At this moment, the male protagonist suddenly remembered a crucial, yet absent, character, Chan Hyuk. Nam Won-seong felt self-satisfied. He went outside, recalling the words he'd overheard at the opponent's house, then stopped Chan Hyuk and showed him a picture of the gangster, Dong-won. The male protagonist said these gangsters were doomed, so Chan Hyuk shouldn't hesitate to go to jail. Now, only Director Nam remained. The person who could solve the Director Nam problem was standing right in front of him. The male protagonist said that Chan Hyuk only needed to testify about what he remembered how Chairman Nam kidnapped, interrogated, and forced him to create false evidence. Dong-yi then encouraged him, saying he'd become the boss of this area, so he should let these people open their eyes and see clearly. He assured him that revealing this would be mutually beneficial. Afterward, the male protagonist went to the construction site and pleaded with the foreman for permission to work. But with 24/7 shifts, where was the time to investigate? But having committed himself, he started working hard and questioned the workers, but found no clues. Meanwhile, Nam Won-seong held a meeting with his close associates. Feeling neglected lately, he needed to mend the friendship between Assemblyman Kim, Mayor Lee, and Section Chief Jeon. He started talking about his baseball field land. Seeing him continuously provoke, Myran warned him not to push things too far. Nam Won-seong said he was just giving everyone advance notice so they wouldn't be shocked by the news. One of them questioned whether he was threatening to reveal everything. Nam Wanseong laughed and said they should be grateful it was only a threat. He added that if it became reality, it would be interesting. He said they were all smart enough to understand without further explanation. While ostensibly a reunion, it was actually a veiled threat, causing them to leave angrily. Nam Wanseong kept Myran behind, asking why there was a prosecutor at the construction site. Myran said they suspected someone was buried there, presenting another threat to him. Nam Wanseong sat alone, thinking whether moving might be digging his own grave, or whether he should find a reason to halt construction. He decided to crush those handling the residents of the redevelopment area, as well as the illegal migrant workers. At a barbecue restaurant, Jae-hee found Dong-yi sprawled out with a food bill for 5 people. After his first ever manual labor experience, Jae-hee had prepared equipment for finding clues. But now the male protagonist's once clean hands were too tired to hold anything. Suddenly, he remembered that if a person wasn't buried underground at the construction site, they could be embedded in the wall and directly covered with cement. This was difficult and definitely required a search warrant to demolish the entire construction site. He went home to sleep, exhausted, only to have to start manual labor again the next morning. Dong-yi wished he could deal with Nam Wanseong immediately. At the police station, Captain Myran divided 3 cases transferred from higher-ups. Following the meeting, Jae-hee and Byung-gun joined the male protagonist at the construction site to look for clues. But before finding any confidential information, they were discovered by the workers there. After a day of manual labor, the male protagonist suddenly noticed something unusual beneath the ground. Then, a loudspeaker announced the construction site's closure the following day. All the workers wondered what kind of inspection required advance notice, causing them to have time off. Hearing this, the male protagonist was certain this was the best, and only, chance. He told his teammates that if Nam Wanseong acted, he would show them where the bodies were. But if they missed this opportunity, Nam Wanseong would win. He told Jae-hee to arrest Nam Wanseong immediately upon finding the bodies, because he couldn't have dug them up himself. The male protagonist only needed to confirm his guess and immediately report it to the police. Just as Jae-hee entered the junior's room, the male protagonist reminded her not to inform C1. Back at the meeting with his team, Byung-gun raised the hypothesis that if the male protagonist discovered the bodies, wouldn't he and Nam Wanseong continuously leak information? If a prosecutor disguised as a worker uncovered the dark past of the person exposing it, this worried Byung-gun. However, they immediately started working to solve the problem. That night, the male protagonist and Byung-gun secretly watched the construction site. They planned that if they left before the police arrived, they would definitely have physical contact. Hearing this, Byung-gun wanted to call Jae-hee because she was the best at this kind of thing. At Nam Wanseong's house, she was watching outside for intelligence. 2 young men at the construction site were fighting over a heating pad when a convoy arrived. This group went to the area where the cement was mixed and dug something up from below. There was also a crusher nearby. When they discovered that they intended to crush all the bodies, the male protagonist ran away, leaving Byung-gun to call the police. The ringleader also noticed a figure in the shadows but didn't investigate. Dong-yi secretly unplugged the crusher, but when the subordinates went to check, he plugged it back in. Suddenly, Byung-gun was captured, and his identity as someone senior was revealed. The ringleader, realizing he was from the prosecutor's office, asked if the senior was Jae-hee or Dong-yi. Byung-gun was surprised because he hadn't said anything, yet the ringleader knew. He threatened that if the other person didn't show themselves, Byung-gun would be finished. Just as his teammate was about to meet his end, the male protagonist pulled the plug on the crusher. Knowing the location, everyone immediately ran to find the bodies. Thanks to his days of community service, the male protagonist hid safely. Suddenly, he heard a call from outside. It was Hyung-sik. The male protagonist watched as his teammate was beaten by the gangsters. Soon after, the police arrived in time to rescue them. Byung-gun, realizing he was alive, cried, and then playfully bit Dong-yi's ear. He then comforted him because the life-or-death battle was finally over. At Nam Wanseong's house, Jae-hee and the police arrived to arrest him in front of his son. The bodies were then excavated and investigated by the police. Jae-hee felt immense pity for the unfortunate victims. During the interrogation, Nam Wanseong continuously denied all charges, acting as if nothing had happened. Jae-hee then mentioned the day 6 months ago when he suddenly closed the construction site. Nam Won-seong claimed he had been reported for substandard construction, forcing him to close it. He continued to deny everything until Jae-hee presented the photos of the bodies. She said the victims surely wanted to call for help, even if they couldn't make a sound. The cement choked them, even their eyeballs sealed with cement. He still didn't confess. Jae-hee questioned whether the design plans were commissioned and planned by Chairman Hee-hong himself from the black box of the supervising company, and the whistleblower was found buried alive at the construction site. Nam Won-seong didn't have any thoughts on this. He only nodded. Jae-hee then had the police take him away. She told Won-seong she would take him to a place with many people to reduce his boredom. Finally, the male protagonist saw his enemy sent to prison. The punishment depended on the crimes Nam Won-seong committed, so the verdict at the trial would decide who won and who lost. Before the trial began, the police successively arrested Nam Won-seong's subordinates. The particularly violent suspect, Jun H-won, who had strangled and buried Jang Woo, was also apprehended. These subordinates revealed the truth, despite their lingering fear of Nam Won-seong. His secretary, though cornered by his lawyer, remained loyal to Nam Won-seong. When the lawyer questioned the cement crushers, Nam Won-seong interjected, expressing regret for using money to settle matters. Previous attempts had succeeded, but this time failed. When the judge pointed out that Won-seong had never mentioned using money, his lawyer intervened, saying he had stopped Nam Won-seong because this would be used maliciously. Because this involved a witness, Nam Won-seong's lawyer wanted to call him Park Chan-hyuk. Upon questioning, Chan-hyuk testified that he had seen Nam Won-seong's son throw away a bag of drugs and was subsequently threatened and silenced by him. As Won-seong suspected, this boy was the biggest problem. If he revealed the threats, everything would collapse. The lawyer claimed he couldn't retract what others had said. Nam Won-seong pressured him using the 2 houses the lawyer had received from him, forcing him to retract the statements of others and break any testimony, the only way to justify the lawyer's fees. Young-kai said that the person had been released, so he was powerless. Back in court, Young-kai asked Chan-hyuk if the prosecutor had said that if he reversed his testimony, they would release the person. Young-kai specifically named Dong-yi as the prosecutor. Hearing this, Chan-hyuk reluctantly agreed. As the male protagonist predicted, they were dragging him in to test their luck. He, too, wanted to know if this was a failed tactic or a creative gambit. The moment Dong-yi sat down, the lawyer immediately questioned his fake worker identity, as someone had reported him wandering in a restricted area and asking many questions about the construction site highly suspicious behavior. Dong-yi could only admit it. The lawyer then brought up the dispute between the 2 sides, suspecting Dong-yi was seeking revenge on the person who had revealed everything by pretending to be a worker. At this point, Jae-hee stood up, stating she had asked Dong-yi to go to the construction site after Park Jang-woo's report of Lee Hong Construction's corruption, which she was overseeing. Therefore, she couldn't handle it carelessly, so she discussed and verified the matter with Prosecutor Seo. She then announced that Nam Won-seong was the one who buried the bodies. The lawyer countered that there was no evidence confirming Nam Won-seong's involvement in the killings. He called it arrogant to rush to conclusions and asserted to the judge that none of today's testimony was true. The male protagonist then said he didn't know how to satisfy everyone. If the testimony wasn't credible, who knew the truth? Dong-yi had been pondering similar questions, and when he went to the construction site, he thought of one person, Nam Won-seong's biggest traitor, who was. Suddenly, Nam Won-seong's son's voice was heard. It turned out that they had obtained the dashcam footage from Nam Won-seong's car, but only data up to June. Someone had tampered with it, deleting the video. They guessed it was his only son. An audio recording surfaced of Won-seong instructing his son to check the dashcam and delete the May footage. Hearing this, Won-seong was furious. A moment of carelessness had ruined his entire plan. The male protagonist pointed out that May was when the victims were buried, and the defendant, Nam Won-seong, was at the scene, making it a confession. Won-seong didn't realize that all calls from prison were recorded. Exposed, he adopted a defiant attitude towards the judge, causing the trial to be temporarily suspended to deal with his outburst. That evening, colleagues celebrated, but the male protagonist couldn't attend due to a trial report. The 2 old-timers knew where he would be. Jae-hee acknowledged his accomplishments but added that they don't reward someone who strangled someone one year and saved someone else the next. At home, the male protagonist worried about tomorrow. Dong-yi sat before the judge, awaiting his punishment. Although Dong-yi had made mistakes in 2017, he wasn't prosecuted due to his significant assistance to the investigation team. He was ultimately dismissed from the office. Before leaving, the judge reminded Dong-yi to be at the General Education Headquarters, room 53, by 9 am 1 month later. The male protagonist returned home, looking at his prosecutor's ID card with regret. All his efforts to restore his honor were in vain, as he was dismissed. Old employees leave, and new ones arrive. Chan Hyuk, now outside the law, enjoyed himself. Myran was shocked to receive reports of Chairman Nam's bribery and sent the information to Jae-hee to turn it into evidence. Though Jae-hee asked about the source, Myran refused to answer. Chairman Nam's hidden funds were discovered, and the 20 billion won in cash found in Nam Won-seong's villa sent shockwaves through social media. Byung-gun, while having lunch, received news of his upcoming transfer to the Supreme Prosecutor's office, excitedly abandoning his meal. 2 months later, the male protagonist arrived at room 503 at 9 am, finding several people there, prosecutors who had all been implicated in something. He was surprised to meet this person. The scene shifts to the police station. Byung-gun cheerfully greets colleagues when Dong-yi arrives, vaguely mentioning something before entering the station. In Myran's office, he mentions suppressing the school violence of a child, angering her. Myran throws away her cards and scolds the ridiculous supervisor. Dong-yi says he notified the person being supervised as per his job description. The person who sent him was Myran. It turned out that Won Cheol had previously gone to room 503 to report on this special task force. They were responsible for investigating corruption within the prosecution. Although dismissed, they received basic salaries to monitor those most likely to commit crimes, the reason the male protagonist sought out Myran. Meanwhile, Jae-hee reminded the male protagonist he would be facing Byung-gun, while Byung-gun received news that he would be supervising Dong-yi. The following days continued similarly. Yu-rai's father frequently visited her, bringing flowers with a regretful expression. Nam Won-seong, in prison, was ridiculed by his subordinates for his failure. Dong-yi was encouraged by a senior to rebuild everything from scratch. His spirits lifted, he confidently sought justice.